A single father cared for his sick son until the doctor revealed a devastating secret about his past. What began as despair transformed into unexpected love. A story that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and comment on where you're watching from. The alarm clock rang at 5:45 in the morning, cutting through the silence of the duplex apartment in Brooklyn like a sharp blade. David Johnson had already been awake for 15 minutes, staring at the white ceiling of the bedroom while mentally reviewing the endless list of medications, inhalation, therapy schedules, and medical appointments that filled each day of his life for the past 8 years. At 35, David bore the weight of a responsibility he never imagined he would have to face alone on his broad, slightly hunched shoulders. His brown hair, prematurely graying at the temples, told the story of sleepless nights and constant worries. The calloused hands of a civil engineer trembled slightly as he prepared the first medication of the day, not from inexperience, but from the accumulated fatigue of a routine that allowed no breaks. The apartment reflected his meticulous personality. Each medication had its specific place in the refrigerator. The inhalers were strategically positioned in his son's room and the living room, and detailed spreadsheets taped to the kitchen wall recorded times, dosages, and symptoms with the precision of an engineering project. "Dad!" The raspy voice of Michael echoed from the next room, followed by a dry cough that made David's heart race instantly. "I'm coming, champ," he replied, quickly getting up and walking the few meters that separated their rooms. Michael was sitting on the bed, his 8 years seeming even more fragile under the yellowish light of the airplane-shaped lamp. His messy, blonde hair framed a pale face, but his blue eyes sparkled with the same determination as his father. His chest rose and fell with visible difficulty, each breath a cruel reminder of the cystic fibrosis that dominated their lives. "Is it hard to breathe?" David asked, automatically adjusting the pillows to a higher position. "A little bit," Michael admitted, trying to hide his discomfort with a brave smile that broke his father's heart. "But I'm okay, Dad. I promise." David sat on the edge of the bed, watching every movement of his son as he prepared the inhaler. The familiar sound of the compressor filled the room, blending with the sounds of the city waking up outside. Through the window, he could see the increasing activity on Fifth Avenue, where shopkeepers were beginning to open their stores, and the smell of warm bagels wafted from the corner bakery. "Dad, why are you always worried?" Michael asked, as he positioned the mask on his face, his curious eyes studying his father's tense expression. The question hit David like a punch to the stomach. How could he explain to an 8-year-old that each of his son's difficult breaths felt like a stab to his heart? How could he say that the fear of losing him consumed his thoughts every second of every day? "Because you are the most important person in my life, Michael. It's my job to worry about you," David replied, gently stroking his son's hair. "But Mom said that worrying too much is bad for your heart," Michael murmured through the mask, vaguely referring to the fragmented memories he had of Emily, who had passed away when he was only 2 years old. His wife's name was still like an open wound for David. Emily had been his perfect opposite. Spontaneous where he was meticulous, optimistic where he tended to be cautious. Her death in a car accident had shattered not only his life, but also his ability to trust that good things could last. "Your mom was very wise," David agreed, feeling the familiar tightness in his chest. "She would tell me to trust more, wouldn't she?" Michael nodded, and for a moment, silence settled between them, filled only by the rhythmic sound of the inhalation therapy. David watched his son's delicate profile against the soft morning light and felt the familiar guilt settling in his chest, like a physical weight. He should have been able to give Michael a complete family. He should have found a way to be both father and mother simultaneously, without it feeling like an impossible task. He should have been strong enough not to let fear dominate every decision, every day, every breath. "Dad?" Michael interrupted his thoughts, removing the mask. "Can I go to school today? Peter said he's bringing a volcano project and I want to see it." David mentally checked the weather conditions, air quality and medication schedule. The private school where Michael attended was understanding of his medical needs, but each day away from home represented variables he couldn't fully control. "Let's see how you're feeling after breakfast," he replied diplomatically, already knowing he would probably say yes. Denying small joys to his son was something his heart couldn't bear. As they prepared breakfast in the open kitchen, David watched Michael trying to reach for a cup on the high shelf. The boy's stubborn independence constantly reminded him of Emily, who always insisted on doing things herself, even when accepting help would have been easier. "Let me get it," David offered. "I can do it, Dad," Michael replied, climbing onto a chair with determination. The simple scene perfectly encapsulated his daily dilemma: to protect too much, or to allow his son to develop independence despite his physical limitations. It was a balance David had yet to master, a delicate dance between love and fear that defined every interaction between them. The phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Sandra, the secretary from the pulmonary clinic at Mount Sinai Hospital, confirming the afternoon appointment with the new doctor. David had switched pulmonologists after Dr. Smith retired the previous month, and the anxiety about starting over with a different professional bothered him more than he would like to admit. "New doctor?" Michael asked, picking up fragments of the phone conversation. "Yes, champ. She came from Springfield and they say she is very competent," David explained, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Michael frowned, processing the information with the seriousness that children with chronic medical conditions develop prematurely. "Will she know how to take care of me like Dr. Smith did?" The innocent question revealed a concern that Michael rarely expressed, the constant uncertainty about his own future. David knelt in front of his son, holding his small hands between his own. "Michael, listen to me. It doesn't matter how many doctors we see or how many appointments we have. I will always be here, always fighting for you, always finding the best people to take care of your health. That's a promise." Michael nodded, but his eyes revealed a disturbing maturity for his age. He had learned too early that promises, no matter how sincere, cannot control all the variables of life. As they prepared to leave, David observed their reflection in the hall mirror, a man and a child united by circumstances neither had chosen, but facing them together with a courage that even surprised David in his darkest moments. The day ahead would be like so many others: medications, care, worries, and small victories. But David did not know that this routine appointment with the new pulmonologist was about to shake the foundations of everything he believed he knew about his own life. At 2 in the afternoon, father and son walked toward the hospital, unaware that some discoveries have the power to completely rewrite the story we thought we knew. Mount Sinai Hospital loomed large on Fifth Avenue, its modern facade reflecting the golden light of the afternoon sun. David parked the silver Honda Civic in the basement, checking for the third time to see if he had brought all of Michael's medications and test results. The navy blue folder he carried contained 8 years of meticulously organized medical history, every X-ray, every blood test, every hospitalization report. "Dad, you're nervous," Michael observed as they walked through the hallways that smelled of disinfectant and had that characteristic artificial brightness of hospitals. "A little," David admitted, adjusting his tie. He had dressed more carefully than usual: light blue dress shirt, black dress pants, and freshly polished shoes. First impressions mattered, especially when it came to his son's health. The pediatric pulmonology reception area was decorated with colorful drawings and aquariums with tropical fish, a well-intentioned attempt to make the environment less intimidating for children. Michael pressed his nose against the glass of the largest aquarium, watching an orange clownfish swim in lazy circles. "Mr. Johnson?" a female voice called. David turned and felt the air escape slightly from his lungs. Dr. Helena Smith was standing at the door of the office, and her presence seemed to fill the space in a way he couldn't explain. She was about 32 years old, with wavy brown hair pulled back in a casual bun, and her green eyes conveyed a mix of professional competence and genuine curiosity. She wore a white lab coat over a teal blouse that highlighted her eyes, and there was something about her posture, upright but not rigid, that suggested confidence without arrogance. "That's me, Doctor. This is Michael," David replied, placing a protective hand on his son's shoulder. "Hi, Michael. It's nice to meet you." Helena knelt down to be at eye level with the boy, a gesture that David immediately noticed. Many doctors spoke about children as if they were objects, not people. "Can I call you Michael, or would you prefer I use your full name?" "Michael is fine," the boy replied, clearly impressed by the respectful attention. "You came from Springfield?" "I did. Do you know it?" Helena smiled, genuinely interested in the answer. "My dad mentioned it. Is it far from here?" "About a 3-hour drive. Very different from New York. Greener, quieter. But New York has its advantages too." David watched the interaction with growing admiration. Helena was not just being polite. She was genuinely engaged, treating Michael as a whole person, not just a set of symptoms. Dr. Helena's office reflected her personality, organized yet welcoming, with diplomas on the walls mixed with photographs of countryside landscapes. A small succulent plant rested on the table next to the computer, and there was an aroma diffuser releasing a subtle scent of lavender. "So, Michael, tell me how you've been feeling," Helena began, sitting in a chair that she placed at the same height as the boy's chair, not behind the imposing desk. "Sometimes I get tired," Michael replied honestly, "especially when I go upstairs or run a lot. And the cough, how is it?" "It's worse in the morning. Dad always does inhalation therapy with me." Helena nodded, taking notes on a tablet. David noticed that she was writing not only the symptoms, but also observations about Michael's behavior and expressions. "Mr. Johnson, may I see the most recent test results?" David opened the organized folder with colored dividers. "They're all here, organized by date. The most recent ones are at the front." Helena took the folder, and David watched her eyes carefully scan the documents. Her eyebrows furrowed slightly as she compared dates and results, and she occasionally went back to examine older tests. "Michael, how about you choose a book from that shelf while I talk a bit with your dad?" Helena suggested, pointing to a small children's library in the corner of the office. As Michael moved away, Helena leaned slightly toward David, lowering her voice. "I need to ask some questions about the medical history. Were there any complications when Michael was born?" "Not that I knew of. My wife Emily had a normal delivery. Michael was born weighing 7 pounds and 2 ounces. Very healthy," David replied, feeling the familiar pang of pain at the mention of Emily. "And when did the first symptoms of cystic fibrosis appear?" "Around 6 months. It started with frequent respiratory infections, then came the digestive issues." David made more notes, but he noticed a hesitation in her movements, as if something was bothering her. "What type of test confirmed the diagnosis?" "Sweat test and genetic analysis. Everything is in the initial reports in the folder." Dr. Helena flipped through the documents again, stopping at a specific page. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and she picked up a small magnifying glass to examine something more closely. Mr. Johnson, may I call you David? Of course, Doctor. David, forgive me for the personal question, but did you and your wife undergo genetic testing before the pregnancy? The question caught David off guard. No, why? There was no history of cystic fibrosis in either of our families. Dr. Helena nodded slowly, but her expression remained thoughtful. It's just that I'm seeing some discrepancies in the initial tests. What kind of discrepancies? Dr. Helena hesitated, clearly weighing her words carefully. Nothing serious, probably just documentation errors. But I would like to repeat some tests to ensure we are working with accurate information. David felt a chill in his stomach. Doctor, are you suggesting that there might be something wrong with the diagnosis? No, that's not it. Dr. Helena hurried to clarify. The diagnosis of cystic fibrosis is clear and correct. Michael definitely has the condition. It's just that some details in the initial documents are not aligned with what I see in the more recent tests. What details? Dr. Helena looked at Michael, who was engrossed in a book about dinosaurs, then returned her attention to David. For example, the blood type recorded at birth doesn't match the blood tests we have here. It could be a typographical error. These things happen. But as a physician, I prefer to clarify any inconsistencies. David frowned. And could this affect the treatment? Not directly, but accurate information always helps optimize care. I would like to conduct some additional tests at the next appointment, if you agree. Of course, Doctor. Whatever is best for Michael. Dr. Helena smiled, and David noticed how her eyes softened. I can see that you are a very dedicated father, David. Michael is a lucky child to have someone who cares so much. Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough, David admitted, surprising himself with his own honesty. Raising a child with special needs alone, there are moments when I feel like I'm failing. Every parent feels that way sometimes, Dr. Helena replied gently. But from what I see, you are doing an extraordinary job. Michael is polite, confident, well cared for. That doesn't happen by chance. The compliment hit David in an unexpected way, creating a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt in a long time. There was something in the way Dr. Helena looked at him, without judgment, with genuine understanding, that made him feel seen in a way that transcended the doctor-patient relationship. Dad, look at this, Michael interrupted, running over to show an illustration of a dinosaur. Did you know that the Triceratops had 3 horns for defense? I didn't know that, champ. Very interesting. David smiled, noticing that Dr. Helena was watching the interaction with attention. Michael, do you like dinosaurs? She asked. I love them. I want to be a paleontologist when I grow up, or a pilot. I'm still deciding. 2 fantastic professions, and I bet you would be great at either one. David watched Michael's face light up with encouragement and felt a deep gratitude for this doctor who treated his son not just as a patient, but as a person with dreams and potential. As they scheduled the next appointment, David found himself observing Dr. Helena's graceful movements, the way she smiled at Michael, the calm competence with which she handled the documents. There was something about her that made him want to trust, a quality he couldn't quite define. See you next week, then, Dr. Helena said, extending her hand to David. The handshake lasted a second longer than professionally necessary, and David felt a subtle electric current pass through his fingers. Dr. Helena seemed to feel it too, as her eyes met his for a prolonged moment before she stepped back. Doctor, David said when they were already at the door, thank you for treating Michael with such care. You don't need to thank me, David. That's how it should always be. As they walked back to the parking lot, Michael chattered about dinosaurs and how much he liked the new doctor. David nodded and responded automatically, but his mind was elsewhere, processing the appointment and trying to understand why he felt a strange mix of hope and unease. Something about those discrepancies that Dr. Helena had mentioned bothered him, but at the same time, for the first time in years, he felt that maybe he wasn't alone on this journey. There was something in Dr. Helena Smith that suggested she would be more than just a doctor in their lives. What David didn't know was that Dr. Helena had spent the previous night obsessively reviewing Michael's medical records, and the inconsistencies she discovered were far more significant than she had revealed. But some truths needed to be carefully investigated before being shared, especially when they had the potential to change lives forever. Dr. Helena Smith spent Thursday night poring over Michael's medical documents spread across the dining table of her rented apartment on the Upper East Side. The open windows let in the cool May breeze, mingled with the distant sound of traffic from Fifth Avenue. A cup of cold coffee sat forgotten next to a stack of tests as she meticulously compared dates, signatures, and lab results. At 32, Helena had developed a keen intuition for medical inconsistencies during her 8 years of experience in pediatric pulmonology. A graduate of Springfield University, she had always been the student who questioned, who investigated beyond the obvious, who was not satisfied with superficial answers. This trait had been both her strength and her weakness in her marriage to Dr. Eduardo Smith, a traditional cardiologist who preferred to follow established protocols. "You complicate things too much, Helena," Eduardo used to say during the arguments that marked the last years of their marriage. "Not everything. It needs to be a scientific investigation." But now, analyzing Michael's medical record, Dr. Helena Smith knew that her investigative instinct had detected something significant. The blood type recorded at birth was B positive, but all subsequent tests indicated O negative. The difference was too glaring to be a simple typing error. She picked up the phone and dialed Dr. Mark Silver, her mentor from residency, and currently the director of the clinical laboratory at General Hospital. "Mark, it's Helena. Sorry for calling late, but I need a favor." "Helena, how's life at Mount Sinai? Have you adjusted to the pace of New York?" The older doctor's warm voice brought a smile to her face. "Still adapting. Listen, I need you to look into some discrepancies in old tests. It's for one of my patients, a child. Sure, you can email them to me. Actually, I'd prefer if you could take a look in person. It's complicated." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Mark knew Helena well enough to understand that when she said something was complicated, it usually was. "I'll stop by tomorrow morning before my shift." "Thanks, Mark. I owe you one." As she organized the documents, Helena reflected on the afternoon consultation. David Johnson had impressed her with his obvious dedication to his son, but also with the vulnerability he was trying to hide. There was something in his dark brown eyes, a mix of determination and exhaustion that touched her deeply. During her divorce, Helena had often questioned whether she truly wanted to have children. Edward had made it clear that he thought her excessive dedication to work was incompatible with motherhood. Watching David navigate the complexities of being a single father to a child with special needs, she felt a growing admiration and a pang of regret for never having fought to balance both. The next morning, Dr. Mark arrived at Helena's apartment carrying a worn leather briefcase and 2 cups of coffee from the corner cafe. "You look like you haven't slept," he observed, hugging her warmly. "I got 3 hours. This case is intriguing me," Helena admitted, pouring fresh coffee as Mark settled onto the sofa. "So, tell me what you discovered." Helena spread the documents on the coffee table, pointing out the discrepancies. "Look at this. Different blood types between birth and later tests, some questionable medical signatures, and dates that don't match the standard protocol of the hospital where he was born." Mark adjusted his reading glasses, carefully examining each document. His 25 years of experience in forensic medicine had made him an expert at detecting document irregularities. "This is definitely not a typing error," he murmured, comparing 2 pages. "And look at this signature from the pediatrician responsible for the first visit. See how the R is different in both instances." Helena leaned in for a better look. "Do you think there could have been forgery?" "It's possible. Or maybe—" "Helena, have you considered the possibility of irregular adoption?" The question hit Helena like a bolt of lightning. She had thought of medical errors, bureaucratic issues, but she hadn't considered that Michael might not be David's biological son. "Are you suggesting that—" "I'm suggesting that these documents were altered to conceal something. The question is, by whom and why?" Helena sat heavily in the armchair, processing the implications. If Michael were illegally adopted, it would explain the inconsistencies, but it would also mean that David might not know the truth about his paternity. "Mark, what do I do with this information?" "First, you need to be absolutely sure there are irregularities. Second, you need to decide if it's your business as a doctor or not." "What do you mean?" "Helena, you've known this man for a day. You don't know the full family history, the circumstances of the child's birth. Nothing. You could be messing with something that will destroy lives." Helena knew Mark was right, but something inside her prevented her from simply filing the discovery away. What if there's important medical information being omitted? What if the real genetic history is crucial for treatment? "Now you're thinking like a doctor," Mark smiled approvingly. "But be careful, these waters are deep." After Mark left, Helena spent the rest of the morning trying to focus on other patients, but her thoughts kept drifting back to David and Michael. She had noticed the genuine connection between father and son, the evident love that bound them. Would it be right to potentially shake this family in the name of a quest for truth? At 2 in the afternoon, while having a sandwich at the hospital cafe, her phone rang. "Hello, Dr. Helena. This is David Johnson. Sorry to bother you." "You're not bothering me at all, David. Did something happen with Michael?" No, he's fine. It's just that—" "Doctor, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday regarding the discrepancies. Can I ask you a question?" Helena felt her heart race. "Of course." "These irregularities, could they mean that someone lied about something important?" The direct question caught Helena off guard. David was more perceptive than she had imagined. "David, why are you asking this?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Because my mother-in-law, ex-mother-in-law, called me this morning, Donna Francis. She said she wants to talk to me about something important related to Michael. And for the first time in 6 years, she wasn't yelling at me." Helena felt a chill in her stomach. What exactly did she say? "That there are things about Michael's birth that I need to know, that she kept secrets to protect Emily's memory, but now she thinks I have a right to the truth." "And are you going to talk to her?" "I set a meeting for today at 5 at her house. Dr. Helena, I'm scared of what she's going to tell me." Helena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of responsibility. "David, before you go talk to your ex-mother-in-law, can I suggest we run some additional tests on Michael to have complete medical information? Do you think it's necessary? I think the more information we have, the better we can care for his health. And, David?" "Yes?" "If you need to talk after your meeting with your ex-mother-in-law, my phone will always be available. As a doctor and as a friend." "Thank you, Doctor. That means a lot to me." After the call ended, Helena stared at her phone, questioning if she had said the right thing. She was navigating unknown territory, mixing medical concerns with something that was beginning to dangerously resemble emotional involvement. At 5:30, her phone rang again. "Dr. Helena?" David's voice sounded shaky, almost unrecognizable. "David, how did the conversation go?" "I need to talk to you in person. Can you meet me somewhere?" Of course, where are you? In the hospital parking lot. I couldn't go home. I don't know how to look at Michael now. I'm coming down, let's talk. Helena grabbed her bag and rushed down to the parking lot. She found David sitting in the driver's seat of his car, his hands trembling as he held a yellow envelope. David, what happened? He looked up at her, and Helena saw unshed tears glistening in his devastated expression. Donna Francis told me that Michael is not my biological son, that Emily had an affair before we got married and got pregnant, that they forged the documents to make me believe I was the father. Helena felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. David. 8 years, doctor. 8 years loving that child, sacrificing everything for him, and he isn't even mine. His voice broke. Donna Francis said she kept the secret because she saw how much I loved Michael. But now she thinks I have the right to know the truth. Helena opened the passenger door and sat next to him, not thinking about the professional implications. David, listen to me. Michael may not carry your genes, but that doesn't change the love you have built. You are the only father he knows. But I've lived a lie. Everything I believed about my life, about my family, is false. Helena observed the raw pain on David's face and felt her heart break. Sometimes the biological truth is less important than the emotional truth. Do you love Michael? With all my soul. And does he love you? Yes. Then that's the only truth that matters. David looked at her with an expression that mixed gratitude and despair. But what now? What do I do with this information? Helena knew that her answer would define not only David and Michael's future, but also the direction her own life would take. Because at that moment, in the quiet hospital parking lot, she realized she was no longer just Michael's doctor. She was becoming something much more important in their lives. Now, she said softly, let's figure out together the best way to protect that extraordinary boy who calls you Dad. Saturday morning arrived cloudy and heavy, mirroring David's emotional state. He had spent the previous night lying on the living room sofa, watching Michael sleep through the slightly open door, questioning every shared moment, every "I love you, Dad," whispered before bed. Donna Francis's words echoed incessantly in his mind like a scratched record. Helena arrived at David's apartment at 9 in the morning, carrying a bag of fresh bagels from the bakery and 2 thermoses of coffee. She had spent the night awake, devising a plan of action that could protect both David and Michael from unnecessary trauma. "How are you?" she asked as soon as David opened the door. "Confused, exhausted, angry," David replied honestly, noticing that Helena was wearing jeans and a simple white top, the first time he had seen her outside the hospital environment. There was something comforting in the casualness of her outfit, in the humanization of the competent doctor figure. And Michael? Still sleeping. Last night he sensed something was wrong. He asked if I was sick. David ran his hand through his messy hair. How can an 8-year-old be more perceptive than his own father? Helena placed the bag on the kitchen counter and turned to face him. "David, you need to stop blaming yourself. If there was indeed document forgery, that is not your fault. But how did I not notice? How can a father not know that his son is not biologically his? Because you loved unconditionally, because you trusted your wife, because sometimes love makes us vulnerable, and that is not a flaw, it's a quality." David leaned against the kitchen counter, watching Helena prepare breakfast with efficient and careful movements. "Donna Francis wants to meet with me again this afternoon. She said she has more information. Are you going?" "I have to go. As painful as it is, I need to know the whole truth." "Then I'll go with you." David looked at her, surprised. "Helena, you don't need to get involved in this. You've already done more than any doctor would." "David." Helena stopped stirring the coffee and looked him directly in the eyes. I'm getting involved because I want to, because you both mean more than you should to me." The raw honesty of the confession created a tense silence between them, charged with unexpressed possibilities. "Dad?" Michael's sleepy voice echoed from the hallway. "I'm here, champ," David hurried to respond, automatically switching back to protective mode. Michael appeared in the kitchen, in his Spider-Man pajamas, his hair sticking up in various directions. His eyes lit up when he saw Helena. "Dr. Helena, what a nice surprise. Did you come to have breakfast with us?" "I did, Michael. I brought warm bagels. My favorite." Michael approached the table where Helena had set up a complete breakfast. "Dad, why didn't you tell me the doctor was coming?" David exchanged a quick glance with Helena. "It was a surprise for me too, son." As Michael enthusiastically attacked the bagels, David observed the natural interaction between him and Helena. She asked about school, Michael's friends, discussing dinosaur projects, treating him with the same respect and genuine interest as during a medical consultation. "Michael," Helena said casually, "can I ask you a question about your family?" David tensed, but Helena continued gently. "Do you have pictures of your mother?" "I do. Dad keeps a special album in his room. Want to see?" Before David could protest, Michael had dashed off to get the album. Helena seized the seconds of privacy. "I need to see the pictures, David. There might be visual clues." "Clues of what?" "Physical similarities, timelines, anything that confirms or contradicts what your ex-mother-in-law said." Michael returned carrying a red leather-bound photo album. "Look here, Doctor. This is my mum when she was young." Helena carefully flipped through the pages, studying the photographs of Emily Johnson. She was a beautiful woman with curly brown hair and dark eyes, but her features bore no resemblance to Michael's. The child had straight blonde hair, blue eyes, delicate bone structure, a combination that couldn't be explained by the basic genetics of his parents. "She was very beautiful," Helena commented sincerely. "Michael, do you remember her?" "A little. I remember the smell of her perfume and that she sang a lullaby about butterflies." David watched Helena discreetly examining each photograph, searching for visual evidence that could clarify the situation. When she reached the wedding photos, she paused at a specific image. "David, when did you get married?" "December 2016. Why?" Helena pointed to a photo where Emily was in a wedding dress, clearly pregnant. "And when was Michael born?" "March 2017. She was 6 months pregnant at the wedding." Helena quickly did the mental math. If Michael was born in March, Emily must have gotten pregnant around June 2016. The December wedding indicated they decided to marry after discovering the pregnancy. "Michael, how about you watch cartoons while your dad and I talk about boring adult stuff?" Helena suggested. "Can I watch on the tablet in my room?" "Sure, champ," David agreed. Once they were alone, Helena closed the album and leaned forward. "David, you need to tell me exactly how it was between meeting Emily and the wedding." "I met Emily in April 2016 at a friend's wedding. She was different from other women I knew. Spontaneous, cheerful, a bit mysterious." "Mysterious how?" "She didn't like to talk about her family, about the past. She said she preferred to live in the present." David paused, recalling details that at the time seemed charming. "We started dating in May, and in July she told me she was pregnant." "And how did you react?" "I was shocked but happy. I always wanted to be a dad." David smiled bitterly. "Emily said she was sure the baby was mine, that she had only slept with me during that time." Helena nodded, taking mental notes. "And her family? How did they react?" "Donna Frances didn't like me. She thought I wasn't good enough for her daughter. She said Emily deserved a richer, more sophisticated man. But when she found out about the pregnancy, her attitude changed. She insisted we get married quickly." "For religious reasons," Exactly. The family is very Catholic, very traditional. The idea of a bastard grandchild was unacceptable. Helena began to see a pattern. David, is it possible that Emily lied about the paternity to protect you from a painful truth, or to protect herself from a scandal? What do you mean? What if she really had an affair with another man, got pregnant, and when she realized he wouldn't take responsibility, decided you would be a better father? The possibility hit David like a punch. Are you saying she used me? I'm saying that maybe she made a desperate choice and then genuinely fell in love with you, which would explain why you were happy during the years you had together. David stood up and walked to the window, watching the street's activity. If that's true, it means Michael has a biological father somewhere, a man who might not even know he has a child, or who knows and chose not to take responsibility. And now, what do I do with this? Helena approached him, placing a gentle hand on his arm. First, let's talk to your ex-mother-in-law and find out exactly what she knows. Then we can decide together what the best course of action is. Why are you doing this for us, Helena? The question forced Helena to confront feelings she had been trying to ignore. Because in 3 days, you have become more important to me than anything else in New York. Because when I look at Michael, I see the child I always dreamed of caring for. And because when I look at you... She didn't finish the sentence, but David understood. There was something growing between them, something that transcended the doctor-patient relationship and dangerously approached the territory of love. Helena, I don't want you to get hurt because of our problems. It's too late for that, David. I'm already involved. The sound of Michael calling from the room interrupted the intimate moment. Dad, can you come here? The tablet froze. As David went to help his son, Helena stayed in the living room, looking at the photographs spread out on the coffee table. There was one in particular that intrigued her, Emily at 18, hugging a jovial-looking young man who didn't appear in any other photo. When David returned, she pointed to the image. Who is this guy? David took the photo and frowned. I've never seen him before. Must be some high school boyfriend. Helena examined the photo more closely. The young man had light blonde hair, blue eyes, delicate bone structure, features that strongly resembled Michael. David, she said calmly, I think we've just found our first suspect. Donna Francis's house in Brooklyn remained exactly as David remembered, a brick duplex with a front garden full of rose bushes and a creaky wrought-iron gate. The door was open. The smell of tomato sauce and basil wafted through the slightly open windows, mingling with the earthy aroma of the light drizzle that had begun to fall. David parked in front of the house at 3 in the afternoon, with Dr. Helena Smith beside him and Michael in the back seat, engrossed in a dinosaur book. The decision to bring the boy had been difficult, but they both agreed that hiding the situation from him would be worse than gradually including him in the truth. Are you sure you want to do this? Helena asked, watching David grip and release the steering wheel repeatedly. I'm not sure about anything else, Helena, but I need answers. Donna Francis opened the door before they even rang the bell. At 72, she maintained the upright posture and piercing gaze that had always intimidated David. Her grey hair was pulled back into a severe bun, and she wore a black dress that accentuated her austere appearance. But there was something different in her expression, a vulnerability that David had never seen before. David, she said in heavily accented Italian, as she always did when emotionally shaken, and you must be the doctor. And my precious Michael. Michael ran to hug his grandmother, who welcomed him with a tenderness that contrasted with the coldness she had always shown towards David. Grandma, I missed you. Why don't you come visit us more? Ah, my dear, she sighed, stroking Michael's blonde hair. Grandma did some wrong things and was ashamed. David and Helena exchanged a meaningful glance. It was the first time Donna Frances had shown any kind of regret. The living room was decorated with heavy, dark wood furniture, family photographs in gold frames, and an imposing crucifix on the main wall. Donna Frances served espresso in fine porcelain cups, moving through the house with the authority of someone who had commanded that space for decades. "Michael, dear, there are fresh biscotti in the kitchen. Go get them while the adults talk," she suggested, clearly wanting privacy. When Michael left the room, Donna Frances sat heavily in her favorite armchair, suddenly seeming much older and frailer. "Dr. Helena," she began in careful Portuguese, "David told me you discovered irregularities in the medical documents. I found some inconsistencies, yes, but I would like to understand the context before reaching any conclusions." Donna Frances nodded slowly, her wrinkled hands clasped in her lap. "8 years ago, I made a terrible choice. I thought I was protecting my family, but now I see that I only created more pain." "Francesca," David interrupted, using her formal name as he always did. "I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning." The older woman closed her eyes, as if gathering courage. "My Emily was complicated. She was always rebellious, always getting into trouble. At 17, she fell in love with a boy." "The boy in the photograph?" Helena asked. Donna Frances looked surprised. "You saw the photo?" "Michael showed us. A young blonde, blue-eyed boy." "Luke Bennett," Francesca sighed deeply, "son of a wealthy family from Aspen, but a boy without character, without responsibility." David felt his stomach tighten. "Continue." "Emily dated Luke for 2 years. At 19, she got pregnant. The words came out like a painful confession. When she told him, Luke said he couldn't take responsibility for the child, that his parents wouldn't accept an illegitimate grandchild." Helena leaned forward. "And what happened then?" "Emily was desperate. She cried day and night. She said she didn't know how to raise a child alone, that she had no money, that she didn't want to be a single mother." Donna Frances wiped away a tear that had rolled down her cheek. I suggested she look for another man, a good man who could be the child's father." The silence that followed was deafening. David felt as if he were watching his life crumble in slow motion. "And she chose me," he said hoarsely. "It wasn't like that, David." Donna Frances defended herself. "She truly fell in love with you. She saw how good, honest, and hard-working you were. She said you would be a better father than Luke could ever be. But she lied about the paternity. In the beginning, yes, but later she told me she wished you really were the father, that she regretted meeting Luke." Helena calmly intervened. "Francesca, were the medical documents falsified?" The older woman lowered her head. "My brother-in-law, Enzo, works at the Civil Registry Office. He altered some documents, the blood type, the probable date of conception, to make it seem like David was the father." "And the paternity test?" "It was never done. David trusted Emily completely." David abruptly stood up, walking to the window. Outside, the drizzle had intensified, creating a grey curtain over the street. "Why are you telling me this now, Francesca? Why after 8 years?" "Because Luke Bennett died last week." The revelation fell over the room like a bomb. Helena choked on her coffee, and David turned quickly. "He died. Car accident. And his wife. She is doing an inventory of his assets. She found letters that Emily wrote to him telling him about Michael." David felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Letters. Emily kept in touch with Luke for a few years. She sent him photos of Michael, told him how he was growing. Luke never responded, but Emily, she couldn't completely cut the connection. Helena got up and went to David, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "David, take a deep breath. Luke's widow wants to meet Michael," Donna Frances continued, ignoring David's emotional state. She has no children, and now she has discovered she has a stepson. She does not have a stepson, David exploded, his voice echoing through the room. Michael is my son. I took care of him when he was sick. I stayed up nights. David! Helena's firm voice interrupted him. Michael can hear! He stopped, breathing heavily, realizing he had shouted. From the hallway, a suspicious silence could be heard. That indicated that Michael was listening to the conversation. Dad? Michael's small, worried voice echoed from the kitchen door. David closed his eyes, struggling to control his emotions. I'm here, champ. It's okay. Michael appeared in the doorway, carrying a plate of biscotti, his blue eyes filled with concern. Why are you guys talking loudly? Did someone do something wrong? Donna Frances knelt in front of Michael, holding his small hands. Bambino, sometimes adults find out things that make them sad or confused, but nothing has changed. The love we feel for you. Are you fighting because of me? The innocent question pierced the hearts of all the adults present. Helena knelt beside Donna Frances. Michael, do you remember when we talked about dinosaurs? How sometimes scientists discover new things about them? Yes, sometimes we discover new things about families too. Things that don't change love, but help us understand our history better. Michael looked at David. Dad, do you still love me? More than anything in the world, Michael, that will never change. Then it's not a problem. If you love each other, the rest doesn't matter. The child's simple wisdom brought tears to everyone's eyes. Donna Frances slowly stood up. David, there's one more thing you need to know. I don't know if I can handle more revelations today, Frances. Luke's widow. She wants to do a DNA test to make sure Michael is his son. David looked at Michael, who was savoring a biscotti, oblivious to the storm brewing around his paternity. What if the test confirms that Luke was the biological father? Asked Helena. Then she will file for visitation rights, maybe even joint custody. David's world completely collapsed at that moment. Not only had he discovered that Michael was not his biological son, but now he faced the possibility of losing him to a stranger who had suddenly appeared claiming maternal rights. That won't happen, he said with fierce determination. Michael is my son. It doesn't matter what the tests say. Helena watched the pain and determination on David's face and made a decision that would change the course of their own lives. David, she said firmly, we're going to fight this together because Michael is right. When there is true love, the rest really doesn't matter. In that moment, in the living room smelling of coffee and revealed secrets, a new family began to form, not by blood ties, but by the conscious choice to protect and love a child who deserved all the happiness in the world. Outside, the drizzle continued to fall, washing the streets of Brooklyn, while 3 adults planned how to shield the innocence of an 8-year-old boy from the cruel complications of the adult world. Monday arrived heavy with tension in the apartment in Brooklyn. David had spent the entire Sunday alternating between moments of silent fury and periods of deep melancholy while trying to maintain a normal appearance for Michael. The boy, with the keen insight that children develop in unstable situations, sensed that something significant had changed, even though he couldn't quite identify what. Helena appeared at 7 in the morning, carrying fresh croissants and 2 cups of coffee from the French bakery on 5th Avenue. She had only slept 3 hours, spending the night researching legal precedents on paternity disputes and irregular adoption rights in the US. How was your night? She asked, noticing the deep circles under David's eyes. Michael had a respiratory crisis at 2 in the morning. I had to do inhalation therapy for an hour, David replied, pouring coffee into mugs. He was anxious, even without fully understanding what was happening. Children feel the emotional energy of adults. It's natural for that to affect his condition. Michael appeared in the kitchen already dressed for school, but his movements were slower than usual, and Helena immediately noticed his slightly labored breathing. "Good morning, Dr. Michael," she greeted him affectionately. "How are you feeling today?" "A little tired," Michael admitted, climbing onto a chair to reach the glass of water. "Dad, can I skip school today?" David and Helena exchanged a worried glance. Michael rarely asked to miss class. School was one of his favorite refuges, where he could be a normal child interacting with peers who didn't see him just as the sick boy. "Are you feeling unwell, champ?" David asked, moving closer to check Michael's forehead. "Not unwell, just different, like something is going to happen." The child's intuition sent a chill down Helena's spine. "Michael, how about we spend the day together? We could go to the aquarium in Springfield. Would you like that?" Michael's eyes lit up for the first time in days. "Really? Can we see the sharks?" "Of course, and then we can have lunch somewhere special." David watched the interaction, feeling a mix of gratitude and guilt. Helena was trying to normalize a situation that was far from normal, taking on responsibilities that weren't hers. At 9 in the morning, as Helena and Michael left for the outing, David's phone rang. The name on the screen made him freeze. Dr. Valentina Bennett, lawyer. "Hello? Mr. Johnson? This is Dr. Valentina Bennett, attorney representing Mrs. Marina Bennett. May I speak with you for a few minutes?" David sat heavily on the sofa. "You may." "Mr. Johnson, my client is the widow of the late Luke Bennett, and she has recently discovered evidence that her stepson may be the biological child of my deceased client." "Michael is nobody's stepson. He is my son." "I understand your position, Mr. Johnson, but legally we need to clarify the situation. My client is willing to make an amicable agreement." "What kind of agreement?" "She would like to meet the child, establish a gradual bond. In exchange, she is prepared to offer significant financial support for medical treatment and education." David felt bile rise in his throat. "She is trying to buy my son." "It's not like that, Mr. Johnson. Marina recently lost her husband and discovered she might have a stepson. It's natural for her to want to meet you." "And what if I refuse?" There was a calculated pause on the other end of the line. "Then we will have to resort to the judicial system, a DNA test, an investigation into the circumstances of the child's birth registration. I'm sure we would prefer to avoid that route." The threat was clear and cruel. David closed his eyes, feeling the world collapse again. "I need time to think. Of course, but don't take too long, Mr. Johnson. My client is impatient." After the call ended, David sat in the silence of the apartment, processing the new reality. In less than a week, his life had transformed from a predictable routine into a legal nightmare. The phone rang again. This time it was Helena. "David, something happened. We're at the aquarium and Michael suddenly started crying." "Crying? Why?" "He said he had a waking nightmare, that he saw a woman trying to take him away from you. David, I think he's picking up more of the situation than we imagined." David grabbed the car keys without hesitation. "I'm coming to get you." He found Helena and Michael sitting on a bench outside the New York Aquarium. The boy nestled in her lap as he watched the cars pass by on Fifth Avenue. Helena gently stroked his blonde hair, murmuring soothing words. "Michael," David knelt in front of his son. "Tell me what happened." "I was looking at the fish, and suddenly I had a bad feeling, like someone wanted to separate me from you." Michael lifted his red eyes from crying. "Dad, does someone want to take me away?" The direct question hit David like a punch. He looked at Helena, who nodded slightly. It was time to start telling the truth, even if partially. "Michael, do you remember your mum?" "A little bit. Why?" "Before you were born, your mum met some people. One of those people now wants to meet you too." Michael frowned, processing the information with characteristic seriousness. "Like Grandma Francis?" "Not exactly like Grandma. It's a person we don't know very well yet. And she wants to take me away from you?" David felt his heart break. "Michael, listen to something very important. No matter what happens, no matter who shows up, you will always be my son. And I will always fight to keep you. Promise?" "I promise." Helena watched the exchange between father and son with a tight heart. She knew David was making a promise he might not be able to keep, but she also understood that at that moment, hope was more important than brutal honesty. That afternoon, Helena cancelled all her appointments, and the three of them went to David's apartment. While Michael rested in the bedroom, she and David sat in the living room to plan a strategy. "I need a lawyer," David said, running his hand through his hair. "I've already researched some names. Dr. Carlos Mendoza is a family law specialist and has an excellent reputation." "Helena, I can't afford an expensive lawyer. I spent all my savings on Michael's treatment." Helena hesitated for a moment, then made a decision that would define the course of her involvement in the situation. "I'll pay." "I can't accept that." "David, it's not charity. It's an investment. In both of you, in the possibility of us being a family." The word family hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning and possibilities. David looked at Helena, this woman who had appeared in their lives just a week ago and had already become indispensable. "Why are you doing this?" Helena moved closer to him on the couch, taking his hands in hers. "Because when I look at Michael, I see the son I always wanted to have. And when I look at you, I see the man I always wanted to build a family with." "Helena." "David, I know it's too early to say this, but I'm falling in love with both of you, and I won't let anyone destroy this family. Not the widow of Luke, not the judicial system, no one." David pulled her into a desperate embrace, feeling for the first time in days that maybe he wasn't completely alone in this battle. "What if we lose? What if she manages to take Michael?" "We're not going to lose," Helena said with iron determination, "because true love always wins. And what you have is true love." From the bedroom, Michael's sleepy voice called them. "Dad? Dr. Helena, can I sleep in the living room with you tonight?" "Of course, champ," David replied. "Let's have a sleepover." As they set up an improvised camp in the living room, using sheets and pillows, none of them knew that on the other side of the city, Marina Bennett was hiring a private investigator to find out everything about David Johnson's life. The storm was just beginning, but for the first time since everything started, David felt he had allies in the approaching battle. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to protect what he loved most in the world. The private investigator John Smith parked his black Chevrolet Onyx in front of David's building at 6 in the morning on Wednesday. At 52 years old, John had worked 15 years in the police department before opening his private investigation agency in the Upper West Side. His face, marked by deep wrinkles, and his graying moustache conveyed a seriousness that inspired confidence in wealthy clients like Marina Bennett. Marina had been clear in her instructions. "I want to know everything about David Johnson. His finances, his relationships, his ability as a father. If there's anything we can use to prove that Michael would be better off with me." John opened his worn leather notebook and reviewed the basic information he had already collected. David Johnson, 35 years old, civil engineer, graduated from NYU, widower for 6 years, dedicated single father to a son with cystic fibrosis. In theory, an exemplary profile. But John had learned for decades, everyone had secrets. The first person he sought out was Mrs. Ruth, the doorman of David's building. At 68 years old, Ruth had worked there for 15 years and knew the lives of all the residents in meticulous detail. "Mr. David," Mrs. Ruth smiled when John introduced himself as a researcher, conducting a study on single-parent families. "Oh, that man is a saint. I've never seen a more dedicated father in my life." "What do you mean, Mrs. Ruth?" "Just imagine, sick child, him working, taking care of everything alone. Any time in the middle of the night that Michael has a crisis, Mr. David is rushing him to the hospital. He never complains, never loses his patience." John took notes discreetly. "And socially, does he have girlfriends, friends?" "I've never seen a girlfriend. Just the other day, a very beautiful doctor came here, Michael's pediatrician. But Mr. David is a serious man, you know. He doesn't bring just anyone home. And financially, does he seem to have difficulties?" Mrs. Ruth hesitated, showing the loyalty she had for David. "Look, it's no secret that raising a sick child is expensive. Sometimes I see him counting money before heading to the grocery store, but he always pays everything on time, never owes anything in the building." John thanked her and headed to Michael's school, where he introduced himself as a social worker conducting a routine assessment. The educational coordinator, Ms. Sandra Miller, was equally complimentary. "Michael is one of the most beloved children in the school," she explained, flipping through the boy's record in her cozy office decorated with children's drawings. "Very intelligent, polite, always ready to help his classmates." "And how is the relationship with his father?" "Exemplary. Mr. David never misses a meeting, knows all the teachers by name, participates in all activities. When Michael needs to miss school due to his health, his father sends extra assignments so he doesn't fall behind." "Any behavioral issues?" "None. Michael is mature for his age, a common trait in children facing medical challenges. But he maintains the spontaneity and curiosity of childhood." John also visited Mount Sinai Hospital, where he managed to talk to some pediatric staff. What he discovered only confirmed the pattern. David was universally respected as a dedicated and responsible father. However, his investigation took an interesting turn when he sought out David's former colleagues at the construction company where he had worked until 2 years prior. "David was always competent," explained Marcelo Santos, David's former supervisor, during a coffee break in a nearby diner. "But in the last few years at the company, he became a bit obsessive." "Obsessive how?" "About his son. Any call from the school or the hospital, he would drop everything and run out. He started refusing work trips, projects that required extra time. Management didn't like it." "And was that why he left?" Marcelo lowered his voice. "Officially, it was a staff cut. But between us, they were looking for a reason to fire him. An engineer who can't travel or work overtime isn't useful for a big construction company." John noted this information with interest. Professional instability due to excessive dedication to his son could be interpreted as both a virtue and a deficiency, depending on who analyzed it. The financial investigation revealed more concerning data. David had withdrawn all his emergency savings in the last 2 years to cover experimental treatments for Michael. His credit card was maxed out, and he had taken out a high-interest personal loan to buy specialized medical equipment. On Thursday, John decided to conduct discreet surveillance. He positioned himself in a cafe overlooking David's building and observed the family's morning routine. At 7 in the morning, David left with Michael to take him to school. The investigator noticed that the father obsessively checked if the child was properly bundled up, if he had all his medications in his backpack, if the portable inhaler was working. It was a choreographed dance of care that demonstrated years of practice. At 8:30, An elegant woman with brown hair arrived at the building. John recognized her from the photos as Dr. Helena Smith, Michael's pulmonologist. She went up to the apartment and stayed there for 2 hours, excessive time for a home medical consultation. When they left together at 10:40, John discreetly followed them. They went to a law office in Midtown, staying there for an hour and a half. The investigator noted the address and later confirmed it was the office of Dr. Carlos Mendoza, a family law specialist. "Interesting," John murmured. "They are already preparing for a legal battle." On Friday, he expanded his investigation to include Helena. What he discovered was equally intriguing. A recently divorced pediatrician, she had moved from Springfield to New York just 2 months prior, with no previous history of involvement with the Johnsons. "A very quick and convenient relationship," he noted in his report. The turning point of the investigation came when John managed to access David's phone records through a contact at the phone company. He discovered a series of calls to Donna Frances Rossi the previous week, exactly when Marina Bennett had discovered Emily's letters. A deeper search on Donna revealed disturbing information. Her brother-in-law, Mr. Enzo Ross, had worked at the Civil Registry Office from 2015 to 2018, a period that included Michael's birth. Enzo had been fired for procedural irregularities that were never fully clarified. "Bingo," John whispered, feeling the adrenaline of discovery. The following Monday, he presented his preliminary report to Marina Bennett in her luxurious apartment in the Gardens. Marina, a 42-year-old woman with impeccably styled platinum hair, read each page with increasing attention. "So you're suggesting there was document forgery?" she asked, adjusting her designer glasses. "Everything indicates that yes, Mrs. Bennett. And David Johnson may be facing significant financial difficulties to maintain the child's medical care. And this doctor who appeared in their lives? Very convenient. A pulmonologist who becomes romantically involved with the father. After discovering irregularities in the documents. Seems strategic." Marina smiled coldly. "Keep investigating, John. I want everything. Every financial detail, every relationship, every possible character flaw. If I'm going to fight for custody of my stepson, I need ammunition." "May I suggest something?" "Ma'am." "Of course." "Perhaps it's time to meet the child in person, see how he reacts to your presence, assess if he really resembles the Bennetts." Marina nodded slowly. "You're right. I will visit them, but without warning. I want to see how they react under pressure." As John organized his notes, neither he nor Marina knew that Helena had detected the surveillance 3 days earlier. As the daughter of a retired police chief, she had learned early on to sense when she was being watched. That same afternoon, Helena called David with urgency in her voice. "David, we need to meet. Now. We're being investigated." The war for the family had officially begun, and the first battles would be fought on the treacherous ground of past secrets and present vulnerabilities. David was about to discover that protecting Michael would require much more than paternal love. It would demand a careful strategy and allies willing to fight by his side. David's phone rang at 7 in the evening. The number was unknown. "Hello? Mr. Johnson? This is Mrs. Marina Bennett. I think it's time for us to meet in person." Tuesday dawned with a heavy sky and dark clouds, as if nature itself sensed the tension that would unfold that day. David had spent the previous night awake, pacing the apartment, while Helena prepared a defense strategy that could protect Michael from the trauma of a first meeting with Marina Bennett. "She can't just show up here and demand to see Michael," David murmured for the 10th time, watching his son sleep peacefully in the bedroom. "Legally, she doesn't have that right yet," Helena replied, studying notes she had made after speaking with Dr. Mendoza. "But if we completely deny her, she could use that against us in court, claiming we're being obstructive." The plan they devised was careful. The meeting would take place in Helena's office on neutral ground, with David present and a limited duration. Michael would be gradually prepared, introduced to Marina as a friend who knew his mother a long time ago. At 2 in the afternoon, Marina Bennett arrived at Mount Sinai Hospital, driving a silver BMW, accompanied by her lawyer, Dr. Valentina. Marina wore a navy blue Chanel suit that cost more than David's monthly salary, and her platinum hair was styled in an elegant bun. At 42, she maintained the impeccable appearance of someone with unlimited resources for aesthetic care. Dr. Helena. Marina extended her hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Thank you for facilitating this meeting. Helena shook her hand briefly, studying the woman who threatened the family she had learned to love. Marina was the complete opposite of Emily. Where Michael's mother was spontaneous and warm, Marina radiated calculated control and elegant coldness. Mrs. Bennett, before Michael arrives, I need to establish some rules. Rules, Dr. Valentina interrupted. My client is being very generous by accepting this informal meeting. The rules are to protect the child, Helena said firmly. Michael doesn't know about the legal situation. To him, you are simply a family friend. Any attempt to confuse or emotionally manipulate him will result in the immediate end of the visit. Marina nodded, but her eyes revealed irritation. Dr. Helena, may I ask what exactly your role is in this situation? Are you a doctor or a family lawyer? I am Michael's pulmonologist and a family friend. A very close friend, as I understand. The implication was clear, and Helena felt her blood boil. But before she could respond, David appeared at the office door, with Michael by his side. The moment Marina saw Michael was electrifying. The child was a miniature version of Luke at the same age, the same light blonde hair, the same piercing blue eyes, even the same head tilt when curious. For a second, Marina completely lost her composure, and her hands trembled slightly. Michael, David said gently, this is Mrs. Marina. She knew your mother when she was young. Michael, always polite, extended his small hand. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Marina. Did you like my mother? The innocent question hit Marina like a bullet. Your mother was a special person, Michael. She died when I was little, but my dad tells stories about her. Marina sat in the chair that Helena had strategically positioned, close enough to talk, far enough not to intimidate. What kind of stories? That she sang lullabies about butterflies, and that she made the best macaroni and cheese in the world. Michael smiled with the innocence of someone who doesn't perceive the emotional currents around him. Do you have children, Mrs. Marina? The question was like a dagger. No, Michael, I don't have children. That must be sad. Having kids is cool. My dad is the best dad in the world. David felt his heart tighten at hearing his son's spontaneous declaration of love. Helena watched Marina carefully, noting how she studied every gesture, every expression of Michael. Michael, Marina said, carefully controlling her tone, may I ask you a question? Would you like to meet other members of your mother's family? Helena and David immediately tensed. That question went beyond the established boundaries. Are there more people from Mommy's family? Michael asked, genuinely curious. Marina, David interrupted firmly, I think that's enough for today. But Dad, I want to know about Mommy's family. Marina seized the opening. Michael, what would you say if you knew there were people who love you and want to take care of you, besides your dad? Mrs. Bennett, Helena stood up abruptly. The conversation is over now. But, Doctor, Michael protested, confused by the sudden tension in the room. Michael, how about you choose a book from the shelf while the adults talk? David suggested, clearly struggling to maintain control. Anger. When Michael stepped back, Maria turned to David with eyes shining with contained emotion. He is exactly like Luke was at the same age. Even the way he tilts his head when he asks questions. He is like I was at that age too, David retorted. Curious children have similar mannerisms. Mr. Johnson, be realistic. Look at him, then look at yourself. You don't look alike at all. Physical resemblance doesn't define parenthood. 8 years of love, care, and dedication do. Maria stood up, adjusting her Hermes bag on her shoulder. Mr. Johnson, I will be direct. I can offer Michael things you simply cannot. An education at the best private school in New York, medical treatment abroad, a secure financial future. Michael doesn't need your money. He has love. Love doesn't pay for experimental surgeries or imported medications, Maria retorted cruelly. Love doesn't guarantee he will reach 20 years old healthy. The statement hit David like a bullet to the chest. It was his deepest fear verbalized in the cruelest way possible. Get out of here, Helena said in a dangerously low voice. Now. Dr. Helena, the truth is painful but necessary. This man does not have the resources to give Michael the best treatment available. And you think you can buy a child's love? I think I can save his life. The silence that followed was interrupted by Michael's small voice from across the room. Why are you fighting over me? Did I do something wrong? Everyone turned to see Michael standing with a book in his hands, his blue eyes filled with contained tears. The innocence in his expression contrasted painfully with the cruelty of the adult's situation. David knelt in front of his son, holding his small hands. No, champ. You didn't do anything wrong. Adults sometimes disagree about things that aren't the children's fault. But you're talking about me. I heard my name. Maria took a step towards Michael, but Helena physically interposed herself between them. Michael, Maria said over Helena's shoulder, one day you will understand that some people love you so much they are willing to fight for you. I know, Michael replied with the devastating simplicity of childhood. My dad fights for me every day, and Dr. Helena does too. The innocent declaration was a direct blow to Maria's heart. For a moment, her mask of control slipped, revealing a deep vulnerability. Michael is right, David said, standing up and placing a protective hand on his son's shoulder. I fight for him every day, and I will. Keep fighting, no matter who shows up trying to tear our family apart. Maria regained her composure, returning to her cold and calculating personality. This conversation isn't over, Mr. Johnson. My lawyers will be in touch. When Maria and Dr. Valentina left, the office fell silent for several minutes. Helena closed the door and leaned against it, emotionally exhausted. Dad, Michael said softly, that lady didn't like me, did she? Why do you think that, champ? She looked sad and angry at the same time, like she wanted something she couldn't have. Michael's keen perception once again surprised the adults. David hugged him, feeling a mix of pride and terror at having such an intuitive son. Michael, sometimes adults get confused about what they want, but you never need to worry about that, okay? Okay, Dad. Can I have a milkshake now? Michael's ability to quickly return to childlike interests brought a relieved smile to David and Helena's faces. Of course, champ. Let's get the best milkshake in New York. As they walked towards the hospital's diner, none of them saw Maria Bennett in the parking lot, talking on the phone with John Smith. Find out everything you can about his finances, she instructed, watching the family walk away. And I want to know exactly how much a lung transplant would cost for that child. I will prove that he cannot provide the best medical care available. The war had escalated, and Maria was prepared to use Michael's own medical condition as a weapon against David. What she didn't know was that Helena had already begun investigating experimental treatment options that could completely change Michael's prognosis, and her determination to protect the family was as fierce as Maria's desire to claim it. The revelation came on a rainy Thursday in June. When Helena was organizing Michael's medical records for the upcoming hearing, she had requested all the original tests from the child's early years, determined to find medical evidence that would strengthen David's case. At 10 in the morning, Dr. Mark Silver arrived at Helena's apartment, carrying a bulky folder and a serious expression that she recognized well. It was the same look he had when he discovered something significant in his forensic analyses. "Helena, I need to show you something urgent," he said, rejecting the offered coffee and going straight to the dining table. "Did you find more irregularities in the documents?" "I found something much more important." Mark opened the folder and spread out a series of lab tests. "Remember you asked me to review all of Michael's blood tests since birth?" "Of course." "And then?" "Then I found a discrepancy that isn't a typing error or document forgery." Mark pointed to 2 specific reports. "This test here is from birth, and this one is from 6 months later." Helena examined the documents, frowning. "I don't see the irregularity." "Look at the blood type and Rh factor. At birth, B positive. 6 months later, O negative." "That's impossible." A person doesn't change blood type." "Exactly. Which means one of these tests is wrong, or..." Mark paused dramatically. "We're dealing with 2 different children." Helena felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "Mark, what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that the baby who was born may not be the same Michael we know today." The implication was devastating. Helena sat heavily in the chair, processing the possibilities. "Baby swap at the hospital. It's a hypothesis, or a more complex, irregular adoption than we imagined." Helena picked up the phone with trembling hands. "I need to call David, now." "Helena, wait. Before you destroy this family's life, I need to show you one more thing." Marcos pulled out a photograph that Helena recognized immediately. It was Nurse Carla, who worked in the maternity ward at St. Mary's Hospital in 2017. "I managed to locate the nurse who was on duty the night Michael was born. She agreed to talk to me yesterday." "And what did she say?" "That night there was a very strange situation. A young woman about 19 years old arrived at the hospital in advanced labor, without documents, without a companion. She gave birth to a healthy boy and disappeared before even signing the discharge papers." Helena felt her heart race. "And the baby?" "He was under the hospital's care for 3 days. The social worker was trying to locate the mother when a woman appeared claiming to be a relative, with documentation that seemed correct." "Emily?" "The nurse isn't sure. She said she was very busy that week. Many babies were born. But she remembers that the woman was accompanied by an older lady who spoke with an Italian accent." "Donna Francis," Helena whispered. "And here's the most important piece of information. The abandoned baby had light, blonde hair and blue eyes. Rare characteristics in newborns from typically American families." Helena stood up abruptly, pacing the room as she processed the information. "Marcos, are you telling me that Michael could be the abandoned baby, and that Emily and Donna Francis adopted him illegally?" "I'm saying it's a strong possibility, and if it's true, it explains all the document irregularities. But that would mean that David is not the biological father. Luke Bennett is not the biological father. And somewhere there is a young woman who might be Michael's real mother." Helena leaned against the kitchen counter, feeling nauseous. "And Mrs. Marina Bennett is fighting for custody of a child who isn't even related to her." "Exactly. And David is suffering because he believes he is not the father of a child who may not have known parents." Helena's phone rang. It was David. "Helena? Something terrible has happened. Marina filed for temporary custody. Dr. Miller said we have until Monday to present our defense." Helena looked at Marcos, who nodded gravely. "David, I need to see you. Now. There's something you need to know." "What happened? Your voice sounds strange." David, where is Michael? At school. Why? Come to my apartment alone. And David, prepare yourself. What I'm going to tell you will change everything. An hour later, David was sitting on Helena's sofa, looking incredulously at the documents spread out on the coffee table. You're telling me that Michael could be an abandoned baby that Emily adopted illegally? It's a strong possibility, David. It would explain all the inconsistencies we've found. David ran his hands through his hair, trying to process the information. But that means he's not the child of anyone we know. It means he is the child of those who love and care for him, Helena said gently. You. And Mrs. Marina Bennett. She is fighting for a child who has no biological relation to her. But she doesn't know that, Helena nodded. And the question is, should we tell her? David was silent for long minutes, staring at a photo of Michael on the table. If we tell her, we stop the legal battle, but we also reveal that Michael was adopted illegally, which could lead to other legal problems. And if we don't tell her, we continue fighting against someone with unlimited resources, basing our defense on emotional ties in claims of superior financial capacity. David stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky remained grey. Helena, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Why are you doing all this? Really? A relationship of a few weeks doesn't justify such sacrifice. Helena stepped closer to him, gently touching his arm. David, can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Sure. When I was 17, I got pregnant. I was the daughter of a conservative police chief in my last year of high school, with dreams of becoming a doctor. My parents convinced me to give the baby up for adoption. David turned to face her, seeing tears in Helena's eyes. It's been 15 years, David. 15 years wondering where my child is, if he's okay, if he has parents who love him. When I look at Michael, I see the child I abandoned, and when I look at you, I see the father I hoped my child would find. The raw confession created a silence, heavy with emotion between them. Helena, David, I'm fighting for you because you represent the family I've always dreamed of having. Michael needs a mother. You need a partner, and I need a second chance to be part of a real family. David pulled her into an embrace, feeling the soft scent of lavender in her hair and the warmth of her body against his. What if Michael really were your son? He asked softly. What? What if the young woman who abandoned the baby was you? And if by some miracle of fate you found the child you've been searching for 15 years? Helena pulled away, looking at him with a shocked expression. David, that's impossible. My child was born in Springfield, not in New York. But you said you moved to New York right after you gave birth, and that you never knew where your parents placed the child. Helena felt the world spin around her. The dates matched. March 2017, when she was 19, she had given birth to a blonde boy with blue eyes under circumstances she preferred to forget. Marcos, she called hoarsely, do you have the exact date? Mark checked his notes. March 15th, 2017. Helen sat heavily on the sofa. March 15th, 2017 was exactly the date of the birth of the child she had given up for adoption. Oh my God, she whispered. What if Michael is really my son? David knelt in front of her, holding her hands. Helen, there's a way to find out for sure. How? DNA test between you and Michael. Helen looked at David, then at Mark, processing the impossible possibility that fate had placed the child she had been searching for 15 years in her hands. What if it's positive? She asked, in an almost inaudible voice. Then, David smiled with tears in his eyes, our family will become even more perfect. Michael will have his true parents, and you will have found the child you always sought. In that moment, in the quiet apartment with medical exams scattered across the table, three destinies intertwined in a way none of them could have imagined. And the legal battle that seemed destined to destroy a family was about to reveal that sometimes love finds mysterious ways to bring together people who always belong to each other. The sound of the rain falling against the windows marked the rhythm of three hearts beating in sync, anticipating a discovery that would change their lives forever. The Dr. Helix lab was located in a modern building on Main Street, and the collection room had immaculate white walls that amplified Helen's nervousness. It was Saturday morning, 2 days before the court hearing that would decide Michael's future, and they had managed to schedule the DNA test on an urgent basis. Michael was sitting in the collection chair, swinging his legs and curiously watching the technician prepare the materials for the saliva collection. "Dr. Helen, why do we need to do this test?" he asked with the insight that always surprised adults. Helen exchanged a meaningful glance with David, who was leaning against the wall, visibly tense. They had rehearsed this conversation all night before. "Michael, remember when you asked me if I had children?" Helen knelt beside his chair, careful to keep her voice calm. "I remember. You said no. Well, a long time ago, when I was younger than you are now, I had a baby, but I couldn't raise him, so he was cared for by others." Michael processed the information seriously. "Like me, who is cared for by Dad because Mommy died?" "Similar, yes. And now we're doing this test to find out if there's a possibility that you are that. A baby." Michael's blue eyes widened. "Do you think I could really be your son?" The direct question hit Helen like a lightning bolt. "It's possible, Michael. But regardless of the result, you will always have Dad David, who loves you more than anything in the world. And if you are my mom, will you stay with us?" David stepped closer, placing his hand on Michael's shoulder. "Michael, Dr. Helen is already part of our family, no matter what the test shows." "Cool." Michael smiled with the simplicity of childhood. "Then there's no problem. We can do the test." The collection was quick and painless, but the 3 hours of waiting for the result felt like an eternity. They went to David's apartment, where Helen prepared Michael's favorite lunch, pasta with tomato sauce and Parmesan cheese. While David tried to focus on reading legal documents, Michael was in the living room, watching cartoons, when the laboratory's phone rang. "Dr. Helen Smith, this is Dr. Helix. The test results are ready. You can come by to pick them up?" "Can you tell me over the phone?" "We prefer to do it in person, Doctor." Helen hung up with trembling hands. "David, the results are in." And now? Now we find out the truth. They took Michael with them, as hiding him at that moment would only create more anxiety for the child. At the lab, Dr. Robert Miller, the geneticist responsible for the tests, welcomed them into his private office. "Dr. Helen, Mr. David, before I deliver the results, I would like to explain some technical aspects." "Please, Doctor," Helen said, holding David's hand. The test compared 16 genetic markers between Dr. Helen and Michael. To confirm biological motherhood, we need compatibility in all markers. Michael was sitting on David's lap, playing with a Rubik's Cube he found on the doctor's table, oblivious to the adult's tension. "And the results?" David asked. Dr. Miller opened the envelope and looked at the document. His expression changed slightly, and he checked the data again before speaking. "The results show total compatibility in all 16 genetic markers tested. With 99.9% accuracy, I can confirm that Dr. Helen Smith is the biological mother of Michael." The silence that followed was absolute. Helen felt as if the world had stopped spinning. Her hands flew to cover her mouth as tears began to stream down her face. David pulled her into a hug, feeling his own tears of joy mix with hers. "Does this mean Dr. Helen is really my mum?" Michael asked, looking up from David's arms. "It does, champ," David said, his voice choked. Michael climbed down from David's lap and went to Helen, who knelt to be at his level. "Hi, Mummy," he said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Hi, my love," Helen whispered, embracing the son she had searched for 15 years. "I missed you so much." "But you didn't know it was me," Michael observed pragmatically. "So you don't need to be sad. Now you found me." The simple wisdom of the child made everyone laugh through their tears. Dr. Miller discreetly cleared his throat. "There's one more thing you need to know. With this result, Mrs. Bennett's legal case loses all basis. She was claiming rights based on the paternity of her deceased husband, but Michael has no biological relation to the Bennett family." "What about the legality of the situation?" David asked, considering that Michael was legally abandoned at the hospital and later informally adopted by the Johnson family, and that now his biological mother has been identified and is present. You can regularize the situation through a legal joint adoption. On Monday, the hearing that had terrified David for weeks turned into a formality. Dr. Miller presented the DNA test results to the judge, and Mrs. Marina Bennett, faced with the irrefutable evidence, withdrew her custody petition. "Your Honor," said Dr. Miller to Judge Dr. Fernando Santos, "we would like to request the legitimization of the current family situation, with the formal adoption of Michael by David Johnson and Dr. Helen Smith." Mrs. Marina Bennett was sitting across the courtroom, visibly shaken. When the DNA results were read, she had lost all color in her face. Dr. Valentina whispered something in her ear, and Mrs. Bennett nodded sadly. "Mrs. Bennett," the judge addressed her, "would you like to make a statement?" Marina slowly stood up. "Your Honor, I apologize for this situation. I sincerely believed that Michael was my stepson. I now see that I was mistaken. I completely withdraw my petition and wish happiness to the true family." After the hearing in the courthouse hallway, Marina approached David, Helen, and Michael. "Mr. Johnson, Dr. Helen, I ask for forgiveness for the suffering I caused. Michael is clearly a loved and well-cared-for child. You are a beautiful family." "Thank you, Mrs. Bennett," Helen replied graciously, "and I'm very sorry for your loss." Marina knelt in front of Michael. "Michael, you are a very special boy. Take good care of your parents." "I will, yes. And you take good care of yourself too." Michael's affectionate response brought tears to Marina's eyes. She stood up and walked away, and they never saw her again. 3 months later, in an intimate ceremony at the courthouse, David and Helen got married. Michael served as the ring-bearer, wearing a small navy blue suit and proudly carrying the rings. "Now we are a real family," Michael declared when the Justice of the Peace proclaimed David and Helen husband and wife. "We have always been a real family, champ," David replied, kissing his son's forehead. "We just made it official." The wedding celebration was small, but filled with love, held in the Brooklyn apartment that had become home to the three of them. Donna Frances attended, bringing homemade lasagna and tears of joy. She had become a genuine adoptive grandmother, finally able to love the family that had always been in front of her. "My Emily would be happy," she said to Helen. "She always wished for Michael to have a true mother." Dr. Mark Silver was the best man, and several nurses from the hospital came to celebrate the doctor, who had found not only a new job but a complete family. During the toast, Helen stood up with Michael in her arms. 15 years ago, I made the mistake of believing that I couldn't be a mother and a doctor at the same time. Today, I know I was wrong. Michael taught me that love knows no bounds, and David showed me that families are built with dedication, not just DNA. And I learned, Michael added with his typical childlike wisdom, that sometimes the people you love most in the world are right in front of you. You just have to discover them. David embraced his new wife and son, looking out the window at the city that had witnessed his journey from a lonely man to a complete family man. 6 months later, Helen opened the Hope Clinic, a medical center specializing in the care of adopted children and non-traditional families. David left civil engineering to become the clinic's administrator, using his organizational skills to help other families navigate the bureaucratic challenges of legal adoption. Michael, now with optimized medical treatment and a stable family, showed significant improvements in his respiratory condition. He became a little celebrity at the clinic, helping other children feel less scared during medical appointments. On the clinic's wall, there was a golden plaque with a quote that Michael had chosen: "Families are created by love, not by chance." And every night, when she put Michael to bed, Helen sang the same lullaby about butterflies that Emily used to sing, because some traditions of love transcend biology, time, and circumstances, connecting hearts across generations and creating bonds that even the most complex truth cannot break. In a city of 12 million inhabitants, 3 people discovered that sometimes the greatest miracles happen when we stop searching for perfect love and start building true love with the people that destiny places in our lives.